Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to the Cool Kids Lunch Table podcast with PJ and Mike. Now, please find yourself a seat at their table.
Hey kids, I'm Mike.
I'm PJ.
And today we'll be discussing our favorite 90s TV show events and shows. So this is kind of gets a spiritual successor to our favorite 90s shows, which is more like sitcoms, things like that. But ours is going to show today's going to revolve around like TV events and other TV shows that are not really in the sitcom realm, but definitely one staples of the 90s. So PJ, we always start off, as you know, with a childhood memory. But what was the TV event you look forward to in the 90s? Anything kind of sticks out in your mind?
So what sticks out in my mind, it's not really a moment or an event. It's just the first time I remember having to say, I need to be home at a certain time to watch a show.
Right.
And for me, that was the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yep.
Because we were kids in the 90s, right? But I remember especially, like, the Green Ranger was always my favorite, right? And he was gone. And they were introducing the White Ranger. And this is when I remember, I think this is like season 2 of the show or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I need to know who this guy is because they replaced my favorite Power Ranger with this clown. Who's this White Ranger going to be?
Yep.
And that's the first time I remember having to be home at that time, at that moment, so that I could find out what was going to happen in the story. And then, of course, you find out he's back, right? It's the same guy.
Yeah.
But for me, that was like must-see TV. Like when I realized, oh, shit, TV has this big of a piece of my life where I need to make sure I'm in front of the screen at a certain time, was Power Rangers. And also Batman the Animated Series for me was like an event every day. Like I had to be home to see who Batman was going to fight. Yeah. I always remember like when you would watch the episode, if it was a Robin episode, I always got extra excited if you knew Robin was going to be in the episode.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Great choices, man. For me, I put for, I guess, an event I always look forward to, and this is like in its pinnacle, was the MTV Video Music Awards. I used to love, that award show. We talked about it actually maybe on our first episode, how awards shows have changed. You know what I mean? How they are no longer like must see TV. Mainly due to social media. But I remember the MTV Music Awards, particularly the years of 95, 96, just because I just loved the acts that year. Maybe because it was all my favorite bands and artists, but like I remember Smashing Pumpkins opened the show with Tonight Tonight, and Billy Corgan's wearing a dress, but they're playing that very epic song. I remember the Chili Peppers. This is when they had Dave Navarro on guitar. They played Warped. There was another one where they had Pearl Jam with Neil Young. They were playing Rockin' on the Free World. No Doubt. The Fugees. PJ, do you remember when you'll remember this definitely when Biggie, he was murdered, he passed away, and then Puff Daddy, whatever his name is, P. Diddy now, whatever, but he had his own tribute song. He basically sampled, Every Breath You Take by Sting, and he opened up the show. He had like a white suit on.
Yeah, and wasn't Sting with him?
Yes. And it was like Faith Evans, and like, remember it was like must, because I think he opened up the show. MTV was like blowing it up, and remember it was like must, you really wanted to see it. I did like that song too. Sting's, of course, the Police's version, of course, the OG, and then Puffy's. But I just remember like I had to see it. I wanted to know who would win the awards, and I used to really look forward to those shows. Especially in the 90s. That's at MTV. Those videos were at the pinnacle. They're at their best during that time period. And
do you remember? I don't remember which year it was. I don't know if you remember the year, but Howard Stern was on it.
Yes.
And he had he was Ass Man or whatever he was.
Yeah,
Fart Man. Yes, Fart Man. And he was like just flying through the crowd. And his ass was hitting people in the face. I mean, that was so memorable.
Yeah.
You could never do that now.
Oh, no way. But even like the spectacle of like certain things. I remember like Eminem, he did like the reels. He had like a million Slim Shadys, like a bunch of guys with the blonde hair. And I used to always like Chris Rock used to always kind of host it. And I remember he used to be like, this is the award show about best video, not best music. He's like, Spice Girls, great video, not a great song, but a great video.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to always look forward to that show back in the day. So really special stuff. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of curious, PJ. What other favorite shows or events that you kind of nostalgic for?
I don't know if it counts as a show,
Yeah.
but I think, or even my favorite, just maybe the most memorable '90s television moment for me. I want to start off with a big one.
Do it.
The O.J. Simpson car chase.
Yes.
That was, I mean, it wasn't a show. It became a show because it became the court case. And
Right.
you wound up watching. It was gripping TV. It didn't matter what age you were. You're like, I'm going to watch this. You were watching a court case on TV. It became its own TV show. But that chase with the white Bronco,
Yeah.
I think that defines 90s TV. That has to be one of the highest rated anything ever.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was like people were glued to the TV. They're like, what's this motherfucker going to do? He's
Yeah.
just driving. Like, I mean, everyone was glued to their TV. No one knew what was going to happen. Did he kill these people? Why is he running from the law? He's locking himself in the house. Now
Yeah.
there's a court case about it. The lawyers were characters in that. Like, it was like,
Oh.
you couldn't make it up. But like Johnny Cochran of The Glove Don't Fit, You Must Have Quit. They were characters.
Right.
They weren't even like, it didn't even feel like you were watching a professional lawyer. There was so much media. It was a circus.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest 90s TV moments of all time, is that entire thing, starting with that car chase.
And like you said, when you opened the show, saying like must see, like you had to get home at a certain time. I remember like going home to see like afternoon cartoons. You know what I mean? Like whatever.
Right.
It's maybe like Disney Afternoon. Want to watch Gummy Bears or Rescue Rangers, and then I remember it was all over the channels.
Everywhere.
You know? I used to get frustrated because then when they had the court case, in session after the chase, they would actually put that over,
Everything.
cartoons,
Nothing else
and I used
existed.
to get pissed off. I'm like, I can't believe this is on right now.
It replaced TV. It replaced everything that was happening. You weren't watching a cartoon. You weren't watching a soap opera. You weren't watching the news. All you could watch was OJ in that car, and then the car case, the court case. It was crazy.
Yep. Yeah. So for me, PJ, this was really more of a television show, but for me, it was must-see TV. And I think it's kind of faded into obscurity. But you remember the show Ghost Rider? What
Yes,
a W.
yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Not the Marvel guy. So folks who are listening, so Ghost Rider is basically like these group of kids, and they had to basically solve mysteries like a Scooby-Doo type thing, and they had like a typewriter, and like a ghost actually used to type on it, or a computer, whatever it was, and he would help them solve mysteries, But I remember I don't know if I haven't seen it since 20, 30 years or whatever it was, but I remember like wanting to solve the mystery, and those kind of shows were, I think, very popular in the 90s, where it was like somewhat like, I don't know if interactive is the right word, but like I don't know if they had like, that was like maybe you got like something like in the mail, like everything was like mail in, we'll send you a free something, or like a crossword puzzle, and you like play with the show. I think it has like some kind of element where you wrote into it. It was very big in the 90s. So I think you talked about it too, about, was it Flat Stanley or that stick guy? Stickley. That's it.
Stickley, yep.
That was a big thing with like mailing crap in, mailing your letters, mailing this, and I just remember I think Ghost Rider had that element too. But yeah, I'm glad you remember that.
I do remember that show. I used to watch that show.
Yeah. Peter, what's another TV or event moment you remember?
So I think this is an underrated, huge TV moment that people don't talk about anymore. Happens on a show that really wasn't as successful as it could have been.
Right.
Ellen, right?
Yes.
Never her own TV show. She had a sitcom, right?
Yep.
And it wasn't the biggest hit of all time. But what I remember about that show, even watching this, I was young when this happened. I wasn't like, I don't even think I was a teenager yet. I don't think. And she came out on the TV show as being a lesbian, and that wasn't happening anywhere on TV. It was still very taboo, I guess, at that point. But I remember the scene, and I did no research for this. I remember the scene. She was in an airport. Yeah. And I guess she was trying to chase down whoever her love interest on the show was, and she was trying to tell her what was happening. And when she wound up speaking into like the microphone at the gate, so the entire airport heard her come out, but was really a metaphor for the entire world hearing her finally come out. That was a big, big, big moment on TV, on a show that was pretty funny. That you couldn't really get. It died right after that happened. I guess the world wasn't ready for it, but it was a big moment on TV for a show that was generally pretty funny and pretty good.
Yeah, good one. I think for mine, this is, I guess, another MTV thing, is Total Request Live.
I had that on my list.
Yep. That was another thing. I would come home from school and, I just remember, like, I mean, I don't know if that was actually completely accurate. You can actually call in. I don't know if I really believe that, but maybe it was. I don't know. But, because it was always the ones that were, like, top radio hits.
Always.
I mean, like, you had the Backstreet Boys. They did have, like, Korn or Limp Bizkit on it, but those were, like, your,
Kid Rock.
Yeah.
Ball with the Ball
But
was like number one.
Yeah, but, like, I guess, we're spoiled because we live in New York, and, like, I don't know, it always makes me very proud to see, like, Times Square in the background. I always like Carson Daly. I think people kind of goof on him now. I always
but he was a great host of that show, and he knew enough to not make himself bigger than the music videos, bigger than the guests in the studio.
Yeah, just those interviews that Carson Daly did were just like with Britney Spears. That was mind blowing, and Kid Rock, and remember they had the Foo Fighters on there, and Mariah Carey. I remember she had like one of those off the wall kind of segments.
Wasn't that when she was like going crazy? She just showed up and started like doing weird stuff.
Yep. Snoop
Did
Dogg.
you always find it odd? I always found it odd that like somehow the guests in the studio, whoever they brought in, always wound up on the countdown that day.
Yep.
That's why I think, like you were saying before, was it rigged or not? I think partly it was because you couldn't have one of these people in the studio and not have their video on the countdown.
Yeah. I think it was just almost like like American Idol. I think that was kind of. I don't really know if that's really voting. I think of course, they take it into an account. But
I think they have a plan ahead of time.
Yep, exactly. What do you got next, Mr. PJ?
Let's see. I have a few things on my list. So this actually is something I remember happening. It was a weekly event, really. It's TGIF, right? I think we might have spoken about that on other episodes. But there was one week in particular that I always remembered. And every episode for the TGIF shows took place in Disney World. You remember that week?
Yes. Yep.
And it was
of course.
like Boy Meets World. For whatever reason, they were in Disney, and like they had a family vacation to Disney on Full House. And I think that was right when Disney like bought ABC, I guess.
Yep.
And they were doing like this cross promotion. And that just for some reason I always remember that week of TV.
Yeah, I think one of the episodes, I don't know if it might have been Full House. I think definitely Full House, maybe some other one, because I remember one they actually take the sword out of the stone was one. And one where like they rubbed the genie's lamp or something like that. And that's funny, man. Yeah, that cross.
TGIF in general, those shows were great because it was for everybody in the family. You could watch TV with everybody in the house and not have to worry about what was going to be on TV.
Yeah, we talked about it our last best 90s TV, and that lineup was spectacular. Talk about must-see TV. That was so special. And I think we talked about it too, about Nick at Night or Snick.
Yep.
So Snick on Saturdays.
Yep.
Had all that and Space Cases, all those kind of shows. Mm-hmm.
Nick at Night was great because it played all the old shows. All these old TV shows that as a kid you wouldn't necessarily even know about, but you could watch them. They had like I Love Lucy reruns. But I'll always remember my favorite Nick at Night TV show. I had two of them. I loved Happy Days.
Yeah.
Loved Happy Days.
Absolutely.
I could watch that today on a marathon and never change the station, and I'd be fine with it. And maybe became one of my all-time favorite TV shows was Welcome Back, Kotter.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it is a 90s TV event because that was when Nick at Night was on TV. So even though those shows are old, they had this resurgence during the 90s, and then they got their own station. They did TV Land.
Yes.
Spun out at Nick at Night.
Yeah.
But those shows were such a great time because even though they were old for everybody else, every episode was new for me.
Yes.
So something I enjoyed during the 90s.
Nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know this next thing is it's still around today, but I think it's kind of like the MTV Video Awards. It was at its best during the 90s. Was actually the Thanksgiving Day Parade. I hate the parade now. I hate it with a passion. For multiple
But I still
reasons.
watch it.
I still watch it, of course, out of tradition, but I hate it now. I feel they talk too much over it. I know Matt Lauer's gone, whatever knuckleheads they have there. I like Al Roker, but, they talk too much during it. I feel like I never see the balloons. I feel like they do such all these quick edits. I feel like I'm watching an action movie there. It's like all these quick edits. Like, can we just have a stable shot of, Snoopy coming down or Santa Claus?
And they have all these musical acts. I never know who they are. It's like they find the most obscure people and they bring him out on these floats, and they're singing it, and you just don't care about it.
Yep. I mean, that's a rough day. I mean, no one wants to work that day, even as an entertainer. That's a rough day. But let me just bash it a little bit more. Like I said, I in general, I can't stand marching band music. You know, I understand it's parades, you're gonna have that, but oh my god. But that always drove me nuts too as a kid, where like you're waiting all this time to see Santa, right? And then they put the credits over it.
Over him.
They show him for 5 seconds. You know, he's got
That's it. I'm Santa. Bye.
Later. Yeah, bye. Have a nice day. And then right after that's the best in show, the best dog show. Like
I watch
right
that too. I always watch that.
Right, but I guess
better than the parade.
Right, but for me, the Thanksgiving Day parade in the '90s I feel like there was not these quick edits. It wasn't just a bombardment of advertisements, and you know, it's like that feels so rushed nowadays. You know,
where I like better balloons.
Yeah,
we used to have like a Superman balloon. Now it's like the balloons. I don't care who they are. They like got new characters. I guess it's not for me anymore because the parade's supposed to be, I guess, for kids. But I don't know. I agree. It was better when we were kids. I don't know if it's because we were kids.
I know. But I feel like a big part of it is just like the way they film it now. It's just like too many. Like you never have a steady shot on like SpongeBob or anything. It's just like all these quick things. Yeah. But that was I feel like in the heyday you had that. And I think even Disney, because we talked about before, they even had their own like parade, or maybe it was an Easter parade or some crap.
They used to do a separate parade on like the Disney Channel and through the park.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. What else you got, PJ?
Let's see, what do I have here? Let's see. I have a few on my list that I thought were big moments in TV. And this one, some people I find that people either love this show or hate this show. There's very few people in the middle, but there's no denying it was one of the biggest shows in the 90s and early 2000s. Is Friends.
Yeah.
And the biggest moment on TV that I can remember from the 90s is when Ross and Rachel finally get together.
Wow.
I can remember the scene. They're at Central Perk. It's raining. And he's at the door. They think they missed their opportunity. She runs back, the whole thing. But it was, that's such a huge moment in TV, is Ross and Rachel finally getting together for the first time. That show was like, for NBC, must-see TV was the NBC slogan, right? It was must-see TV. And it was, I think, Seinfeld was the lead-in for Friends, or Friends was the lead-in for Seinfeld, something like that. It was Thursday nights. And, I mean, the world came to an end for everybody every Thursday night because you had to be in front of the TV to watch those two shows. And as Seinfeld was kind of reaching its end of its run and not as popular and not as big, Friends was blowing up and becoming a huge phenomenon, a cultural phenomenon. And it was really, I don't think they were the best characters in the show. I don't think Ross and Rachel were the best characters in the show, but the show revolved around the two of them. And that's just a huge moment when they finally get together. And then it gets crazy because it's on again, off again, on again, off again, or whatever. But that initial first time that they connect, it was such memorable TV.
No, for sure. Yeah, good one, dude. I'm not sure this is a big moment in television, but PJ, I have one question for you. Can you win Ben Stein's money?
I love that show.
I mean, I used to
Kimmel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I just feel like that show. I really enjoyed. I was always amazed. I'm like, what the hell is this guy? He was like a savant or something. I mean, what a very bright man. You know, he has a very interesting career. He was a writer for, I think, one of the presidents, and and an acting career. Super bright guy. I mean, that was incredible. You know,
I used to watch that show all the time. That was on, and it was on like Comedy Central too. It wasn't like it was on a regular network.
Yeah,
that's a great pick. I used to love that show. I like that show better than Jeopardy.
Yeah. Yeah, and because
I remember the end, they put them in those two separate soundproof booths.
Yeah, it was like a booth. Yeah. And they had like earphones on. They had to kind of see if they could outdo each other. You know, but he was crazy, man. Like, what the hell is that guy? You know, like.
And he's so entertaining. On top of being that smart, you know, he's also funny. He's entertaining. He's great host. Yeah, that was a great show. He was great. Whatever happened to him? You never hear from him anymore.
I think I'm assuming he retired. Yeah, you know, because he was already like an older gentleman for he's like one of those actors who's always been old. You know what I mean? So
I remember him in The Mask, and he explained what The Mask was, the Jim Carrey.
Yep. And then quick segue because you talked about Jimmy Kimmel. Remember the Man Show?
That's actually one of the things I was going to
Oh
talk
wow,
about.
okay.
Show, yeah, perfect.
I mean, I don't know if that show would be on today, but
absolutely not. But it was Jimmy Kimmel and it was Adam Carolla.
Yep.
And every episode ended with girls jumping on trampolines.
Yep.
And I used to love that show. I thought it was the funniest show, and I mean I watched it every time it was on. But then they left. They left, and they replaced them with 2 new hosts.
Really? I have no memory of this.
Yeah, so it was replaced with Doug Stanhope and Joe Rogan.
What?
Yes, and for whatever reason, it didn't pick up. Like they just didn't get over with the crowd the way Jimmy and Adam Carolla did, and the show wound up dying out. But they tried to give it second life after Jimmy and Adam left with 2 comedians that are generally pretty funny. I like Joe Rogan a lot. I've seen Joe Rogan live.
Right.
I think he's great, but it just didn't click on the show.
Holy shit! Wow, I'm totally mind blown right now. Actually, that's a good segue because you just talked about Adam Carolla. I used to watch this show late at night. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Loveline.
With Dr. Drew.
Yep. And I just remember, like, as a kid, I was like, oh boy. It was kind of like, actually, this is a very tamer version compared to like Taxi Cab Confessions on HBO, which I did love that show. So sneak it, kind of stay up and watch that. But I remember Loveline was like, it's sexy. Obviously, that was the point. But I remember that was like very like mind blowing as very young. And I'm not sure. I'm sure now you have the internet, but that was pretty cool though back in the day. And remember, like it was almost like a live setting because then you could call and they have one where like maybe when the show got more popular, like you could go to the set, and, like if you had a question. But I mean, you would go behind this thing,
like a curtain or whatever. You saw like a silhouette.
Yeah, silhouette, exactly. Yeah. And but exactly. Dr. Drew and after he was there to provide comic relief, and he was there to be, the straight.
There was a girl on that show too, wasn't there? But I don't remember what it was.
You are correct. I have no clue. I have no memory. I did not do any research, but I did put Loveline on there.
I remember that show. Another show that. Again, this one's not really a moment or anything. It's just a show that I remember. I think it was the 90s, or it might have been the 2000s. I could be off. But was Fear Factor.
Yes. Yep. Oh, yeah.
That might have been late 90s, I think.
Good pick. Yeah.
And I watched that show, and I was like, holy shit, I would never do any of this. There's no amount of money in the world.
Oh, no way, man. Just eating bugs, I can't do that. I can do stunts. I mean, who am I, Mr. Brave over here? But, but I'd rather do the stunts than eating bugs and crap.
Oh, my God.
I can't do that.
There was one where they made them eat like a bull dick or something like that. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this shit. This shit's crazy. What are these people doing? How much money could they be getting?
No way, man. No way. PJ, this is like another TV show. And this guy is still around. But I think this is really when he was at his best. You remember, it was with Bill Maher. It was called Politically Incorrect.
Yes, back when I didn't hate Bill Maher, yes.
Yeah, and I feel like he kind of does it now, quasi. They kind of have like somewhat of a panel, but back in the 90s, that show, it felt like not a show now, real time, but like I don't know, it just felt like you really felt like they like kind of like a podcast. They pressed okay, record, go. Yep. I always enjoyed the conversations.
Yep.
And, some of the most, I guess, more well-known episodes, like when they had like the wrestlers on there, Rowdy Piper. And I remember there's actually a good one where they talk about, they would pick different topics. There's one with Luke Perry's on it, and they were talking about people who are going to be in marathons, like, and the saying, should handicapped people have their own separate marathon? They're like, yeah. And there's one guy wanted to be in a motorized wheelchair, and they were debating, should you let that guy on? And it was a very funny debate, about it.
Pretty funny.
Yeah, but
well, Bill Maher is a comedian, and on top of being a news like a news personality, whatever you want to call him, but he's 100% intolerable now. I can't even watch his show now.
Yeah.
But Politically Incorrect was a good show.
Yeah. What else you got here, PJ?
What else do I have on my list? Let's see. I have a few more on here.
Me too. I have about 2 more.
Yeah, I have, I think, 2 or 3 more too. So, all right. This one, again, not a TV show, but a news case or a news moment. Bill Clinton.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was another one when he came out on the TV and he had to say how he did not have sexual relations with that woman. that was another big thing that monopolized TV. That and Monica Lewinsky, they were all over the TV, and you couldn't help but watch it, even if you didn't want to, because that's all that was on with those news clips and them being interviewed and all this other stuff. And it was like, it's just the whole world was tuned in to our president doing shenanigans in the Oval Office, right? It was just crazy times.
Mm-hmm. I think other two, I'm just doing back to back in terms of just piggybacking off of you is Nancy Kerrigan, with Tanya Harding. That was insane. I remember being as a kid, like I understood it, I didn't fully understand it, Now as I got older, I did, but like, wow, even that. I mean, I never saw the movie I, Tanya, but what a whole that's insane. What happened there? And then I remember being as a kid, being very confused with this. I remember my parents talking about it. It was Amy Fisher and Joey.
Oh yeah.
That was huge, you know. And all this stuff took place on like Long Island too. So it's like nuts.
And you know what else is another big one that happened around that same time was what's her face, Lorraine Bobbitt chopping off John Bobbitt's dick.
Yeah. Whoop.
Yep. And that became such a big news story. They made fun of it on wrestling. Do you remember that with Val Venus?
Yes. Yeah.
When they had the samurais do choppy your pee-pee, and then he came out the next week in a wheelchair with like ice, and his special guest he brought out was John Bobbitt.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I guess another news one I want to talk about. Now, look, I'm not gonna lie. Did I always watch this show? No, but I remember just always being like I felt as a kid, like, oh, I should really watch this. I should be smart. It's Nick News with Linda Ellerbee. PJ.
I hated that. I could not stand it.
What's the matter, PJ? You don't want to be educated?
Oh, the worst.
I think looking back on it, that was actually pretty cool. They did that.
It was a good idea, but as a kid, I'm like, just put on the cartoons. Or something.
Exactly, man. Yeesh.
Ugh.
I think, looking back, if they wanted to engage people, they probably should have had like segments. I mean, not have something more comedy right before, but have some kind of maybe levity before it, and you kind of go back and forth. But I
think it would play better now. I think younger kids now are more in tune with what's going on in the news.
Yes, touche. Yeah, but remember Nick News with Linda Ellerbee, and
I hated it. I just hated it. I was like, please, just put on Doug. What is happening? God, I could be watching Real Monsters. I'm watching this.
Right. And I remember that show was also another thing I was talking about before. Like everything was about mail in a letter, mail in, I don't know, donations. And it was, positive crap. But I remember like that show, I think it was always telling me something to do this. It was like, all right, leave me alone. Like he said, just put on Our Real Monsters. You know what I mean? But yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what else do I have here? 2 more things that I have. I'll just kind of lightning around them back to back.
Yeah, do it back to back. Mm-hmm.
Who shot Mr. Burns?
Yep, absolutely.
That was a huge event for The Simpsons.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
People of all ages watched The Simpsons, and they all wanted to talk about who it was going to be. And then for me, a big one was the Seinfeld finale.
Oh,
and finding out if it could ever live up to the hype of that show. Yeah. Like, is there any way to end Seinfeld that doesn't feel like a giant letdown? And the answer to that wound up being no.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good choices, man. Yeah, I think we talked about our best adult cartoons. We talked about Mr. Burns getting shot, and I remember like at that time I wasn't super into Seinfeld, but I remember that being a big thing. Like it was like it was the end of an era, really.
Yeah.
So that was huge. But yeah, PJ, I kind of want to talk about now if we could bring back a show from the '90s and what would it be? And I think they did bring this back, but it failed. But I think they should bring it back again, but do it right this time, is American Gladiators.
Yes.
I don't know what the big deal is. Just you have those American Ninja shows. Like you have wrestlers. You have wrestling now. WWE is huge. I mean, not the pinnacle of the 90s, but they have everything down to a science. How could they not, and I used to love this show as a kid. And, I'm watching actually the documentary series on Netflix.
It's great.
It's great. I'm on the last episode. I'm about to watch it. But I think that when I was a kid, I loved that show, and like it did it was like wrestling too. But obviously it was real competition,
right?
But I loved the Gladiator because certain ones you had crushes on, or you wanted, I want to look like that guy,
Laser.
I look like Laser or Turbo or Nitro. You wanted to look like them. But I always want, even to this day, I always want to do the last obstacle course, man. You know, I just want to do it. But I can't believe they haven't. I know they redid it maybe like 10 years ago now. I don't know. But there's no reason why they can't bring it back, you know, and have like, you need the gladiators are the big part of the show. Because I think in the 90s, they end up changing the roster. I understand people get injured or things happen, but you gotta. Those are big. You know, they become villains or heroes too. You know, like wrestlers. So, but I loved American Gladiators. I always wanted to.
Show. What was it? The Joust, right? Where they had like the big Q-tip looking things. I always wanted to do that event.
Yep. I remember real quick. This is definitely inspired by American Gladiators because actually this park was probably biggest. I don't know when it came out. Maybe the 80s. It was called Action Park in New Jersey.
Yep.
And this place is notorious for being basically unsafe.
Like a death trap.
Yep, it was like the Wild West. My dad used to tell me stories. People getting injured, people's clothes coming off because the rides were so insane. But when I went there as a kid, they had like a show. But it was basically more or less American Gladiators, right? So at the end, you know, let's say you and I were competing against each other, right? We had a, let's say, you know, I lost, right? Now you have to fight the final boss, right? All of a sudden, this they had like a bodybuilder come out, right? He was like dressed in like military fatigue and everything, you know, jacked, you know, huge guy. He looked like Mark Henry, like huge, you know. And you actually had to joust the guy, you know, but you're wearing like your vacation clothes. You're not wearing knee pads, and you're
right.
But you know, but yeah, I remember this just being wild, you know. But I would love to see that show come back, and yeah, I love American Gladiator. The video, everything. The show was so much fun to watch. It was great. Mm-hmm.
So I have a much different type of show that I would bring back. There's a couple of shows I would love to see come back, but a show that I think would really play in a much different way, a different tone now, would be Wings.
Wait,
I don't know if it was 80s or early 90s, but I think, I don't know. I mean, it was obviously based on an airline, right? So they were in an airport a lot of the time. Can you a show set in an airport now?
Right.
I think it could play. You would have a different cast, obviously, but you would have different types of characters because now you know one of the characters on the show would be like a TSA agent.
Yes.
It would be a much different show, but I think there's still a lot of jokes that could be had in a TV show set in an airport. I would love for them to bring Wings back. I also put Cheers as a show. I would like to, that ended, I think, in like 93 or 94.
Yeah.
So it was more of a late 80s, early 90s show. I think a show set in a bar still plays today.
Sure.
I don't know if you would reboot it. I don't know if you just bring back the original characters. They're bringing back Frasier, so there's no reason why.
That's right. Yep.
No reason why you can't bring back Sam Malone into his bar. I think that's another show that would play pretty well. I think people would like to see come back. I think a lot of the shows in the 90s that were really good, from like a Cheers or a Seinfeld or a Wings, they still play today because those shows are almost timeless in subject matter. So you can bring them back in a different setting, a different era, but still have it be really entertaining and really topical.
Yeah, of course. I think another one for me that I think was that would benefit from being, I guess I'll call it rebooted or anything, would be the show. I think they did reboot. I don't know. It was called Sliders. I still love that show. You know, I just like the science fiction of it kind of thing. I remember just being like must see television, and you know, I feel like I don't know. You have all these streaming things. I know there's other sci-fi shows, but maybe that, like you said, is that must see television. I just remember like, you know, what my brother just kind of waiting to see that show come on. It was, you know, interesting. It was just different, you know, and I think all those shows too back in the day. I don't know. I guess maybe it's just nostalgic eyes, but like I don't know. It felt like everything just seemed to have like a looseness or a natural something natural, very like a science. Yep. It just felt very natural. Maybe the way maybe sometimes I feel like things are even the way they're filmed, like the HD or something, makes it very like it just doesn't takes away the magic of the filming, you know.
There's I forget the term, but there's a term that they use for when the shows look too real with high def. It almost looks like a soap opera effect where it just doesn't. Yes. It doesn't make it look like it's filmed correctly.
Yeah. Exactly. But I mean, yeah, I mean, all these shows and all these like just events, you know.
You know what else I would like to see brought back? It's
Mhm.
not a show specifically,
Yeah,
but do you remember they used to do like movies of the week,
yeah,
and they were just like hour and a half long, almost long episodes of just they weren't necessarily connected to anything. They were just TV shows that were longer. They called it a TV movie, and every week would be like a different story. They don't do that anymore. Now it's just kind of like it's either a TV show or it doesn't exist. You
yeah,
kind of have a little bit more of that with streaming because it's almost like direct to TV now. But
yeah. Mhm.
the idea of the movie of the week, they used to do like horror movies of the week and sci-fi movies of the week. They should do something like that. I don't see why they can't bring something like that back.
Yeah. I think it was on TNT or TMC. It was called like maybe Monster Madness, and it used to be like Joe Bob Briggs, you know, and he used to kind of introduce the movie. It was like usually like
Right.
a horror film, you know. That was very big in the '90s too. Like used to have like, you know, what was it, 25 Days of Bond? They would play every,
Yep.
or they had like the Sci-Fi Channel had like every Godzilla movie. Those marathons were very
Yep.
big in the '90s, you know. Um, but PJ, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball because I feel like this was a really big staple of, you know, for years. I feel like in the '90s was really maybe like the pinnacle, and now I feel it's just completely dropped. It's actually late night talk shows.
Oof. I don't even watch anymore.
I mean, I remember like as a kid, like when I used to like, oh, let me, like I said, watching Taxi Cab Confessions, and you know, we talked about our last episode about, you know, watching HBO comedy specials. But like I remember like staying up to 11, you know, and watching. I felt like an adult, you know. And you compare those shows to now, it's like completely day and night. They don't even feel like they're for adults now. They're like completely cartoonish. I think they're all made, you know, they're basically filming clips to put on YouTube,
On YouTube.
you know. But I mean, like, I can't even imagine, like, you know, we're in our late 30s, and I'm like, these shows they're not interesting. The interviews are horrendous, you know. It's just, you know, like I said, we talk about politically incorrect. You know, like when you used to see like Jay Leno sit down with somebody, look, you could say you think he's funny or not, or even Letterman, whatever, it doesn't matter. You felt like just real, you know.
Yeah.
Now it just feels like, you know, they come in prepared. I know in general they always have an idea what they're going to ask or promote a
But
film,
it feels
whatever.
very rehearsed.
Yes, perfect word. Yeah.
But like Jimmy Fallon, when he does some of the things they do on that show, where they're like the musical wheel of impressions or whatever, push this fake button and we'll see if it's a surprise. Can you do it? You know it's rehearsed. It's not entertaining. I agree. I feel like the last time late night TV or late night talk shows tried to be interesting was when Conan O'Brien got the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
And nobody bought into it. And they kicked him off the show.
Yeah.
And they put Jimmy Fallon, and it's awful. It's just terrible to watch.
Yeah, he's
nothing against him, but it's not a good show.
I don't think any of those guys is good. I don't like Jimmy, the other Jimmy. What's his name?
Jimmy Kimmel?
Thank you. Yeah, him.
I liked him, but we just talked about him. He was great on the Man Show. Now he's terrible.
Yeah, they just all these. I think if you really think about it now, I feel, you know, look, guys like Jay Leno, Letterman. I mean, they're not going to be doing this forever. You know, I'm not sure exactly when they retired, all that kind of stuff. But I feel like, it changed late night was when you know, Barack Obama was going against John McCain. You know, and but that became like the real focus of that. You know, it doesn't matter who you vote, it doesn't matter. But the show really centered around those things. You had like, what was Jon Stewart? You know, the Colbert Report.
Yep.
And I feel like that kind of, they just took that formula and they ran with it now. And all those shows are so political. It kind of took away the comedy of it now. Now it just sounds very preachy. Whatever, regardless, whatever side, if you support that side, hearing it
over and over and over.
Exhausting.
And really, you're watching those shows for entertainment.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I remember, I recommend everyone look up Tim Dillon talks about it. And this other guy on YouTube, I think his channel's called Burback, and they do like basically like a retrospect of late night, and they both bring a point about like, I think Jimmy Kimmel had like the Muppets on. I know like probably Kermit the Frog was probably on with Letterman at one point, but now you're like having this whole, I'm like, who is this for? Is this for like a 12-year-old or for like, they don't feel adult at all anymore. And I don't know.
I think part of the reason why some of those talk shows though don't have the same impact, or they're not the same as they used to be, is actually podcasts in general.
Yeah.
Because now you're not necessarily going to go on the Jimmy Fallon show because you're going on Joe Rogan.
Yep.
Or you're going on whatever celebrity podcast and you're promoting your stuff there. People can listen to it in the car, wherever they want. Sometimes there's a video, sometimes there isn't. But I just feel like it's opened it up to having more people who are more entertaining or better interviewers. There's less restrictions on what can be done.
Yep.
So some of these celebrities, they wind up on these podcasts with other celebrities who they're friends with. And it's a more organic conversation. And I think that's why some of these late night talk shows don't do as well. There's too many other avenues for promotion now.
Wow, great point, man. Yeah. And like you said, podcast, just even like you said, just the internet has changed all that. You know, like you said, you can get a more authentic conversation listening to a podcast. You learn more about it. You spend more time with them.
Right, long form.
Yes. So yeah, that's a great point, man. Great point.
To bring it back, we're talking about, right, to kind of bring it full circle, 90s TV, right? Howard Stern, the Howard Stern TV show. He had that at night. It was a radio show.
It was on the E! channel, man.
It was on the E! channel. And then for a while, he had his own on-demand network, which is really, they were TV shows, but they were really just commercials for you to listen to his radio show in the morning.
Right.
But the reason I bring it up is because Howard Stern I don't want to say he created, but he really revolutionized that long form interview where it was an entire radio show with one guest. And the music and stuff would be in and out because it was a radio show, whatever. But he would have a celebrity guest on, and it would be off the wall conversation that you couldn't do on any other TV show. It felt more raw. It felt more authentic. You didn't know what people were going to say, and you can't do that anymore on late night TV. So people don't go down that avenue for promotion. They go on the podcast. They'll go on a radio show with Howard Stern before they'll go on a late night talk show. I think they should bring Howard Stern to TV and give him a late night talk show.
I know.
It wouldn't be the same as it when he was younger and when he was a shock jock.
Yeah.
But I think he's so talented in just speaking with people. I think he'd be a way better host than whatever popular comedian of the week they throw on these talk show hosts now. I think Howard Stern would be a great late night talk show host. Yeah.
And that's a great choice, man, too. I used to love watching. I used to listen to him all the time on the radio. But I used to love watching him. And that was pretty, even like pioneering, like seeing someone speak. See a radio show, and then they would broadcast it. They would edit it, to a half hour, But on E, that was awesome, though. I remember, oh man, just seeing them interact. I remember, one of my favorite is when they had 50 Cent on as a guest. That whole thing, him and his game shows, and he would have the Howard Stern Whack Pack on. I mean, not making it, but just the spectacle of seeing that on television. And but that show was so funny, man, and I think we talked about our previous episode about funny comedians. I talked about Robin Quivers. I think she's very funny. But you had oh my God, I didn't really like Jackie the Joke Man. What's the other guy?
No, you had Artie Lang.
Thank you, PJ on Fire. Yes, him. I love that guy.
I didn't dislike Jackie either.
I know. I felt like he never really had those. I don't know. Maybe his jokes didn't land for me. I just felt like Artie had just sheer wit. And
Artie was a maniac. Unfortunately, he had all those drug problems. He's still with us. Thankfully, he didn't die from his drug problems, but he's not nearly as mainstream or around anymore. But the thing with Jackie the Joke Man was a lot of his jokes wasn't being delivered by him. He just wrote them for Howard and gave them to Howard. Howard would say the jokes, and Jackie really didn't get the credit for what he was writing.
Right.
But the whole cast of people around Howard, you had Robin, you had Jackie, you had Norm, you had Fred.
Fred
was great. But then even some of the people in the backstage, like Baba Booey.
Yeah. They're a huge part of the show.
Huge part of the show, and that's what makes it so good. And he gave us Beetlejuice, so he automatically wins.
Yeah. But that was and his show, I don't have Sirius, but I love seeing his clips on on YouTube now, and
and people hate on him because the show isn't the same anymore. But this guy's got to be in his late 60s or something at this point.
Exactly.
He's not going to do the same shock jock show he did when he was in his 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
But I think he's grown organically, and I think his show, when you see the clips, are still great.
I think one of my favorite parts. Yeah, I think my favorite part about the show is his musical guests, and when they perform, I don't know who their sound engineer is, but they do an excellent job of recording them. But he's had real super gems on that show. I mean, I think probably, I think it actually made the Foo Fighters even bigger. What made them put cemented them as a permanent new band was they did Everlong. He always talks about that, Dave Grohl. But I guess one of the more recent ones I think I would recommend people check out online is Lady Gaga. She does a piano version of Edge of Glory.
Edge of Glory. I actually remember listening to that when it was on the show. I listened to it on the show.
Yep.
And then watched the video, and it's a great performance.
Yep. And I do like a lot of his songs. Harry Styles, he does Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel.
Yep.
But holy crap! I mean, his version he plays it's a straight cover. It's not like different kind of. It's
right.
A replica, but they just own it. Awesome drummer. And anyway, the performances on that show, outstanding. But Howard, definitely a master of what he does.
Well, he's the king of all media.
Yes. He's so like yes. Sensational. But PJ, I think that might kind of wrap things up, man, for this special 90s Time Machine episode.
I think you're right.
Mm-hmm. But folks, if you are interested in maybe going back into the 90s with certain merchandise and things like that, check out PJ's comic book store. PJ, want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure, yeah. Cool Kids Comics and Toys, 2055 Hempstead Turnpike, East Meadow. We are hoping to open soon, and we do have tons of throwback and retro items for sale in the shop when we open. We actually have some old movies, DVDs. We have comic books for sure, but collectibles from all your favorite 90s TV shows and movies. So when we open, check us out on social media, because there will be a ton of stuff that you're really going to want to check out and maybe even buy. So we look forward to seeing you in the shop.
Yeah, and listeners, thanks for joining us today, and tell your friends about us. And we'll see you same time, same table.
Have a good one.
Boys and girls, lunchtime is over. Please visit PJ and Mike's website, coolkidslunchtable.podbean.com for more information. Follow the boys on all social media apps. Just search Cool Kids Lunch Table Podcast. Now get to class before you get detention.